The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Is that enough games for you guys on Monday? Good gracious. Woof. We got a lot to go over on today's show. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a hoop ball presentation, and also, as always, brought to you by our good buddies at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, HI Kona Coffee on Twitter, hawaiianisles.com, and Hawaiian Isles on Amazon. I am Dan Bespris, at Dan Bespris on Twitter, DanBesbris, or just search for Dan from Hoop Ball. Rumbling along here on Thanksgiving week, a huge 11-game Monday in the rear view, and looking towards the future, a goofy, tiny little 2-game Tuesday before everybody plays on Wednesday. It is the ultimate in big game day. If I'm not mistaken, it's 14 games, which would mean only 2 teams are not playing on Wednesday. That's pretty wild. And then everybody gets Thursday off. So we'll still have a show. Fear not. It'll just be a shorter one, obviously midweek. And then Friday, it's a monster of a card again. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. This is Tuesday's edition of the show. We got a few things to go over. Number one, the Brews letter came out yesterday. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you have not yet gotten on the list, make sure to go to hoop-ball.com/newsletter. What is it? This is one of my favorites, by the way. Aaron Brewski going through the league, basically from a timing standpoint. What does it mean to be running into Thanksgiving week? Talking about life, his kid, the Kings, all 30 teams in the NBA. It's an old-fashioned Brewski breakdown, and the only way to get it is to sign up for the newsletter through Hoop Ball, the Hoop Ball Brews letter. Again, hoop-ball.com/newsletter. Jumping right into the Monday box score, and then I'll tell you about our recruiting push a little bit later in the show. Most of you know about it already. Brooklyn beat Cleveland 108-106, which was right on the mark. Brooklyn was a 2-point road favorite in this ball game. Larry Nance got the start with Kevin Love missing the game. You know, it seemed like it was a back-to-back situation, his last missed one, but it appears actually to be a tiny bit more than that, which means lots for Larry Nance. Jordan Clarkson had one of his I'm above the cut line kind of games, but we know how these things level off. And then early season pickup favorite Tristan Thompson missed a bunch of free throws and really hurt you in this one. Brooklyn side, no DeAndre Jordan, so Jarrett Allen had a 20-20 game, and he's been coming on. Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously good with no Kyrie Irving, as long as that continues. Joe Harris, Taurean Prince, all that good stuff. Nets have had a really favorable schedule since Kyrie Irving went down. Life is not always so simple, but it's important to know it as people are like, hey, they're better without him. Yeah, they've rattled off some wins, but it's coming against Charlotte, Sacramento, New York, and Cleveland. The only one of those teams you could make an argument would be a playoff team in either conference would be Sacramento. We'll see how they fare now in a home-and-home with Boston coming up tomorrow and Friday. That'll be a little bit of a better test for a team without arguably their best player, but certainly one that creates, we've seen it now, enough to probably call it a thing, some chemistry issues. I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility to just say that maybe he's kind of a tough guy to play with. This Brooklyn team looks a little bit more like the other one from last year. But anyway, not much in the way of fantasy ramifications of this ball game. We can keep chugging along. Orlando, like usual, able to hang in there for a little bit and then just not enough firepower. They shot 38% against the Pistons' staunch defense. I mean, it's a rough go without Nick Vucevic. We saw this briefly last year. He played most of the season and obviously the year before that. When there's no Vooch, Orlando's horrible. There are a lot of guys in the NBA that are overestimated in the betting line. Vooch is one of the few who is underestimated. When he's out, everything comes apart. Luckily, Jonathan Isaac is incredible, so even on an off night, he still had 7 cash counters. Mo Bamba filled in admirably with 6 and 12, 2 steals, 3 blocks, but he's very much a streaming option, and presumably, you can't count on 12 points and 5 defensive stats in only 20 minutes So I've decided that I've moved on in this one. And Ken Birch actually played more minutes than Bamba, despite, by all accounts, not doing as much. Markel Fultz is being forced to do a little bit more with everybody hurt, and he's been okay. Evan Fournier, the volume is up. Terrence Ross, the volume is up. He's actually been pretty good. I know this wasn't a great ballgame for him with no defensive stats, but 19 points, 3 threes, couple of rebounds. He really was one steal away from your classic Terrence Ross, 10th man, right on the cut line kind of game. Good news out of Detroit was that Luke Kennard got a little bit of his groove back. His usage is still way down, but he hit a lot of his shots, and this sort of floats him if you still want to sell high. You have a narrow window to do so. Derrick Rose was terrible. He still had his 6 assists, but he only went 1 for 11 from the field. So he was like 5 made buckets and a couple of free throws away from his usual line. And if you're using him to this point, you just keep on doing so. This was a blowout, so he didn't have to play late either. Minutes were normal. His rotations were normal. I wouldn't abandon ship there if it's taken you this far. And Andre Drummond has really slowed on the defensive side of the ball. We figured that there would be a tail-off on offense once Blake Griffin came back. But defensively, after going completely bananas to start the year, he's been much more in that 2 to 3 defensive stats per game instead of the 3 to 4 range. And you notice it with a guy like Drummond, who, again, is not being forced to score as much now. Obviously, the rebounds are still quite nice. Christian Wood played 15 effective minutes, but he's not going to be any good unless Blake Griffin has to miss another chunk of time. Memphis lost at Indiana. They did manage to sort of make it a little bit of a ball game late. John Morant hurt his tailbone late in the first half. I admit I picked up a couple of Tyus Joneses, and then when I saw Ja come back to play the second half, I immediately dropped a couple of Tyus Joneses. Jaren Jackson Jr. was in foul trouble again, but had a really nice shooting game in this one. Ja was pretty good. Brandon Clark was great again. JV actually had a really nice ball game. Missed 2 free throws in an odd twist. Otherwise, it really would have been a hell of a game. A steal and 3 blocks. Jonas looked like he was kind of pissed in this one. I like angry Jonas. He got blocked once or twice by Miles Turner and took issue with it. Miles Turner blocked a lot of people. He had 5 of them in this game. He didn't do much else, but who cares? That's why you drafted him. Jeremy Lamb was solid. TJ Warren was solid. Malcolm Brogdon was fine, but unspectacular. Domantas Sabonis had a double-double with 6 assists. You play the starters. Aaron Holiday had a nice game, but garbage time obviously helped with that. He got his minutes back up to 18. TJ McConnell played 19 minutes, and he's a deep league guy. And officially the days of Goga Batadze are long over now. Again, not too many adjustments in this one. Oh, Jay Crowder had a quiet game, but you're holding on there. He's actually been well above the cut line lately. He just was off. He didn't get the rebounds he normally does. He didn't get the steals he normally does. He still hit his 3 threes. He's just firing away from downtown. He'll usually play enough to get you a steal or a block and a couple of rebounds, a couple of assists. That's his gig these days. So I'm good with it. I'm going to probably demote Dylan Brooks below the cut line because he is so reliant on offense. The other stuff is nice, and he got a little bit of it in this ball game, but in general, that's not really the thing. You on the Indiana side, if you can sell on some of your guard assets, this would be a good time to explore it. Victor Oladipo is probably within 3 or 4 weeks of coming back. Minnesota beat Atlanta on the road. This was a ball game that was actually pretty damn competitive for a while, and then the Hawks just have nobody beyond Trae Young and Jabari Parker. Warned you guys about DeAndre Hunter. We knew he was going to crap himself, and sure enough, that is exactly what happened. He can play big minutes, and it doesn't matter. The only other name on this team I'm concerned with is John Collins. Maybe I'll extend that to Kevin Huerter, whose game I'm not super thrilled with, and he just keeps getting hurt. But it's Trae and it's Jabari. And Trae did everything he could. I mean, he took 28 damn shots in this game. He had a usage of 45, 7 turnovers, no defensive stats. It's amazing to put up a line like this and really is overshadowed by more efficient players. We talked about it on yesterday's podcast, actually. Trae Young has had an incredible season. He's outperforming a lot of expectations, but from an efficiency standpoint, there's still big-time issues. The field goal percent is coming back down where we figured it would settle. The turnovers are colossal, and so for 9-Cat, you have to build that in. Philly looked really bad for long stretches of this game, particularly Joel Embiid. Scoreless. How about that for a weird one, huh? The magic of Marc Gasol, man. This is why Toronto traded for Marc Gasol last year. He played his role. OG Anunoby coming back to earth a little bit. Still, I like him as a fantasy asset. He to me is sort of like a souped-up PJ Tucker, Daniel House, but he was never going to be a top 40 guy or top 30 guy where he was sitting for a while. He's settled now back towards where he's likely going to be with some steals, some blocks, some threes, and then offensively, he's going to be counted on for little bits here and there. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson exploded in a big one. We know Serge is coming back in the next probably week, so I'm dodging this altogether. Freddie VanVleet's about to take a hit with Kyle Lowry, likely within a couple of weeks of coming back, and then Pascal Siakam's job is pretty damn safe. I actually like Marc Gasol with everybody hurt. As people come back, he may move back beyond the cut line. Al Horford, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Josh Richardson, generally Joel Embiid. Philly is just the 5 starters and nothing else. I'm waiting until we get to something that I really want to elaborate on, but so far, it's been a fairly straightforward card. Charlotte lost Cody Zeller to a hip contusion, so thus begins the what issue will Cody Zeller have tour once again. The question here is, how much is Bismack Biyombo really going to play? If Cody Zeller has to miss significant time, we know how Charlotte feels about Willie Hernan-Gomez. The answer, by the way, is they don't much care for him. There were stretches last year where Bismack freaking Biyombo had to play medium-sized minutes. And I admit, I picked him up in a few spots. It's a stretch, though. I mean, he really has to be on the floor for close to 30 minutes to make it work. Because his free throws are going to be terrible. His field goal percent is going to be fine, but he doesn't take all that many of them. You need the rebounds, you need the steals, and you need the blocks. And in order to get to that point, it's going to have to be a large chunk of minutes. I believe, I got to go through some of the numbers. He always has one stretch where he plays a few more minutes. Usually the Cody Zeller injury is that thing. 2 seasons back, you remember Zeller missed like a month and a half in December, January, February range. And Biyombo was actually a really nice pickup over that stretch. He had a lot of 2, 3, and 4 block games. So if we run into that kind of thing, there's a speculative element here. It's a streamer. No, make no mistake. This is not a guy you're looking for rest of season value. But if you're in a head-to-head league, you try to pile up some blocks in the short term, amass a few extra victories, and push yourself into one of those top couple of seeds. Maybe try to get a first-round bye or something like that. Set yourself up. And in Roto, where it's actually even more relevant, these streaming types, is you use these guys that are going to be really good short-term, chew up some of that games cap, but, you know, it's like getting a free 5th, 6th rounder for a couple of weeks. So we'll wait and see. There's always something with Zeller, but you kind of need it to be a week-to-week thing as opposed to day-to-day in order to, I think, warrant dabbling in the Biyombo experience at all. Terry Rozier was decent. Malik Monk hit a couple of threes. He's been a tiny bit better. Miles Bridges was not. P.J. Washington was once again not very good. Seemed like they were going to give him the keys a little bit this year, and they've definitely pulled back on that. And it looks like everybody gets to play kind of thing. Devontae Graham, efficiency issues through the roof, but otherwise he's been a very nice point guard style dude. Huge turnover situation. Nick Batum is useless. He is a drop or not an ad at all. Monk is not an ad. I think Bridges, Rozier, yeah, I mean, you know I don't like Terry very much, but he does belong on a team. P.J. Washington has probably moved across the cut line. He hasn't been good, and his minutes seem unsafe of late. And Zeller has also been on the wrong side of that mark. For Miami, we've seen Kelly Olynyk coming on. Probably not getting as much credit as he deserves. He should definitely be owned after a very slow start. He's doing more than enough to be on fantasy teams. Put up 15, 16, and assists, 2 steals in this ball game. And again, after that horrendous start to the year, he's been a top 75 guy the last couple of weeks. That's a guy that belongs on fantasy teams. You got to carve out a spot for someone like that. Just find a way. because he does a little bit of everything. Steals, blocks, assists, rebounds, points, threes, decent enough percentages. There is a room for that on your fantasy team. There has to be. Again, over the entire year, his numbers are not that impressive. But over the last couple of weeks, he's looking more like himself again. And he's not going to score in bunches, but he's the better center option now that he's healthy. We always wondered about that Myers-Leonard thing. Olynyk has been healthy. He's been averaging more like 25 minutes instead of 18 or 19, and that's always been the case. If he can get up into that neck of the woods, he needs to be on a fantasy team. So I would say in terms of the guys we've covered so far, he's the one where you kind of have to pause the podcast and just go get him. Just go get him. Pause what you're doing, go get him. You sort of like, again, I'll give you the break point here. Did you do it? Good. Let's continue. Jimmy Butler, awesome. Terrific first-round pick. Bam Adebayo was very good. Kendrick Nunn was once again good. I continue to insist he's the guy above the cut line. Goran Dragic was not good. Tyler Herro scored, but did nothing else. When everybody is right, it's Nunn. N-U-N-N. That's above the cut line. Sacramento got the game they've been waiting for from Buddy Hield and almost pulled off the upset. Buddy had 41 and 11 three-pointers. Rashawn Holmes was good again. Efficient. Foul trouble. Corey Joseph, blech. He had 5, 5, and 6 with a steal and a 3-ball, and he's just playing so many minutes that you almost have to give it a look, but his game is so whack. Bogdan Bogdanovic looked like a guy playing through something. He shot 5 of 20 from the field in this ball game. Well, you knew he wasn't going to shoot like 55% forever. Marcus Smart was very good. Enes Kanter picked up the minutes with Daniel Tice out with an illness. The Time Lord had 23 minutes of his own. It seems like Tice is going to get the 20-something, and then the other two guys are splitting up the rest. But when he's out, they almost split it down the middle. You could use either one of them in that spot. Should Tice miss any more time. He's the guy you still want to have. We were keeping one eye on Brad Wanamaker. It seemed like they went the Semi Ojeleye route in this one instead. And at the end of the day, you probably just don't want to deal with any of those guys. It's the centers are the guys that you're watching to see what happens. And plus, and this is really good news, it sounds like Kemba Walker is actually expected to practice this week. I thought there was no chance he would play this week, and now it's actually on the table. Amazing. Really wonderful news for Kemba from a health standpoint. Great news for his fantasy owners, which is like, who cares? Secondary news. That was a pretty scary fall, but they said that he had tingling and a little bit of numbness in his fingers when he first fell, but once they got his neck all squared away, they checked him out. He never had to go into the concussion protocol, but they did anyway, just for precautionary reasons, and he passed. Seems like his neck is feeling better already, and I mean, damn, that's wild. Good work, Kemba. Tough nut. Jeez. Portland got a much-needed win at Chicago, and this was a crazy one, man. Portland was healthy, air quotes. Obviously, they're missing all of their other power forwards. And it just took a game against the hometown Chicago Bulls to wake up old Carmelo Anthony. He had 25, 8, and 2 with 4 threes and a steal on 20 shots. It was not bashful. And Damian Lillard went past first in this one because, well, frankly, it just wasn't needed to score all that much. McCollum had 21. Melo had 25. Hood had 16. The Blazers shot 52%. But this, of course, highlights what you can expect out of the Blazers on a night-to-night basis. If they're healthy, 4 of the 5 starters are close. Rodney Hood is the 4th. And then Melo, who had the big ball game, he fits into that points league bucket. I mean, yes, this was a nice ball game, and yes, this is going to get him put on some more rosters, but this is the outlier. Most of the time, it's the low-efficiency stuff, so don't dive head first into that in a 9-category league. Points leagues, yeah, have at it, man. He's going to take a bunch of shots. I think Dame will be better. This is kind of nice. They're able to work him back through that back thing against some wimpy competition, and finally they got the win. Whiteside was fine in half minutes. But no real changes to this one other than the fact that everybody else is a drop. Anyone who's not starting has no prayer. And I know Scal had an okay game, but you can't trust a guy who played 21 minutes in a blowout win. It would be much lower than that if it wasn't. Wendell Carter Jr., 12-9 for the Bulls, but otherwise it was another rough one. Zach LaVine was held to just 18 points. Denzel Valentine actually got back into the mix in this one a little bit. 11 points, 4 boards. Lauri Markkanen was horrible again, and he's the easiest buy low ever because you almost don't even have to pay for him anymore. Satoransky had a slower game by, if you look at sort of weighted averages, but 11, 5, and 5 with a 3 isn't bad if you work in his normal steal and change. And then Kobe White, the efficiency stuff continues to be a huge drag on him. I know that he has these bigger games blended in with the other ones, but you got to look at the overall ranking. There's a reason he's number 180 despite having some big scoring games. The other stuff is brutally bad. 38.5% from the field. 38. The good games are far less frequent. Utah's a pretty easy team to handicap. Joe Ingles actually had a decent ball game, but otherwise this is sort of as expected. Mike Conley shot the ball poorly, but had 9 assists. I've got to think the steals come around eventually, but you can definitely downgrade him. He's going to be a D-bomb that does not hit the mark. We can basically say that. He's not getting into that top 40 territory where we hoped. 60 to 80 range is still very much within reach. And if you can get him for someone outside or near the end of the top 100, I think you certainly do so. Giannis had a 50-burger and still somehow killed your free throw percent, but you're not complaining. This is a huge ball game. Eric Bledsoe was quiet. Wesley Matthews was the one who actually woke up for a Milwaukee team that, frankly, didn't play all that well and still beat Utah. I thought they'd win by a little bit more, honestly. Lakers won on the road at San Antonio. They're a machine, man. I really thought the Spurs were going to make this one a good ball game, and they were neck and neck until the beginning of the fourth. LaMarcus Aldridge, who, okay, I'm not going to take offense to the fact that people were kind of like, hey, what's going on with LMA these days? He's inside the top 35. I don't know what you want from the dude. He's right where he always is, with good percentages, slightly lower rebounds than usual, slightly higher blocks. It evens out just fine for me. You took him where? Probably in your 4th round, and he's performing better than that because he still hasn't missed a game all year. His team's terrible. That's something to worry about. But overall, he's just trucking along. I wondered if starting Derek White in this ballgame might give Aldridge an opportunity to grab a couple more rebounds. I know that Murray, as a very good rebounding point guard, does put a tiny dent into that. But he did this against Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee. That's pretty good. Jakob Poeltl was a guy I was watching. You knew this was going to be a tough matchup, and he did have 4 and 8 with a steal and a block, which is, top 100 to top 120 range center stuff. I think we can probably do better unless you desperately need rebounding, blocks, and field goal percent in general. He's a guy that's probably towards the edge of useful. I'll say that with the caveat, I do have a team where that is kind of something that the team needs, but he's a liability in a few categories. Free throw percent, he's not going to score, he's not going to pass, he'll never hit a 3. So, there's going to be a reason that he's a free agent in a lot of spots. I like that he's starting. I like that he was still able to put a serviceable line on the board against one of the best front courts in the NBA. But there's limited upside there. It's not like he's going to play 30 minutes. Derek White showed signs of life in the starting lineup. He and DeJounte Murray continue to split minutes. This is a problem situation, and it is not resolving itself. Anthony Davis was once again very good. LeBron James was excellent, outside of god-awful free throw shooting in this one. KCP's continuing to play well with no Avery Bradley and no Alex Caruso. Rajon Rondo was, well enough. JaVale McGee has actually started to outplay Dwight Howard a little bit lately. So that back and forth is more back and forthy than I expected. What do we do about it? Probably nothing. There are some deeper leagues where McGee in 20-ish minutes is going to do enough in terms of, you compare him to a guy like Jakob Poeltl, that McGee's going to probably get you close to the same field goal percent, maybe a tiny bit better. I would assume more blocks per minute, slightly fewer total minutes. I don't know. You're splitting hairs a little bit at this point. If these are the guys that you're debating dumping into your lineup, they're specialists. I recorded large chunks of this show at different parts and mushed them together. You guys can probably, at this point, having listened to the show for so long, figure out when those times are. But I wanted to go back and I wanted to talk a tiny bit more about the San Antonio Spurs guard situation, because we can't just, in my first pass on going over that game, I sort of gave it the throw my arms in the air, whatever kind of deal. But that's not our job here. So let's dig a tiny bit deeper. LaMarcus Aldridge, DeMar DeRozan are fine. They're doing their usual stuff. Again, despite, for whatever reason, people telling me that LaMarcus is not doing his stuff at this point. He's number 31 in 9-cat on a per-game basis. And then by totals, I believe he's number 9? Right? I think he's been truly outstanding because he hasn't missed a game yet. I think the Spurs have actually played more games than some of the other teams in the NBA. So while they are losing a ton of ball games, he's been amazing. He's just been awesome. 338 points, 120 rebounds, 31 blocks. I mean, he's been one of the greatest positive impact guys to your fantasy team. So I don't want to hear the LaMarcus Aldridge is not getting it done thing right now. He sits right behind Giannis and just in front of Jonathan Isaac and Pascal Siakam and Jimmy Butler. Because he's played 18 games. He's played more games than almost anybody in the NBA. CJ McCollum, DeMar